excitable tissue in the organism, which may in turn be understood in biophysical, biochemical, or neurochemical terms, the kind of changes that one can see in the contents of a petri dish. But this, I would argue, has nothing to do with memory as we value it, though it has everything to do with overlooking the true nature of memory. Now, to get to the bottom of the fallacies that underlie the very idea of the neurophysiology of memory, we need to remind ourselves that the nervous system is a material object. Remember what Lynette said. And the material objects are identical with their present states. A broken cup is a broken cup. It is not in itself a record of its previous states, of a cup that was once whole, except to an outside observer who previously saw the cup in its unbroken state and now remembers it, so that he or she can compare the past and present states of the cup. The broken cup has an altered reactivity. It moves differently in response to stimuli, but this altered reactivity is not a memory of its previous state, or more precisely, of the event that caused its altered reactivity, namely its being dropped on the floor. Likewise, although the altered state of the sea slide is, as it were, a record of what has happened to it, it is a record only to an external consciousness that has observed it in both its past and present state, and is aware of both. In other words, it is in the keeping of Eric Kandel. And this is equally true of the altered reactivity of neurons exposed to previous stimuli in higher organisms due to phenomena such as long-term potentiation, in turn arising out of changed synaptic microstructure. So Kandel's memory in a dish has nothing to do with memory as we experience and value it, not to do with the true nature of memory as a record of events evident to an observer. The brain, however, as a material object, cannot be its own observer, comparing its past and present states. More precisely, the present state of a bit of the brain can't reach out, by the temporal equivalent of intentionality, to those salient events that change it from an earlier state. I guess this is what we do with memory. We reach back to past experiences. So memories have an even more mysterious and counter-causal intentionality, counter-causal aboutness, than even perceptions of present events, like perception of the glass and so on. They reach back to previous experiences which themselves reached out to that which caused the experience. Memories supposedly therefore reach back to causes of their causes. What's more, just as in vision I see an object as separate from myself, I see the remembered object, as an image or whatever, as different from the present, as different from the totality of what is here. Indeed, as absent. Memory, as Plato said, is the presence of that which is absent. The memory explicitly locates its intentional object in the past. Memories have a double intentionality. Incidentally, the failure of the scientists present to deal with the last twist of the knife was illustrated, unintentionally of course, by a recent paper in Science by Fried and his colleagues. They announced triumphantly that memory had finally been known. The authors found that the same neurons were activated when an individual was asked to remember a scene, it was a scene from The Simpsons, as when they saw it. Memory, they concluded, is simply the replication of the neural activity that was provoked by the event that is remembered. 2 minutes thought, but a second thought, would realize that this leaves unexplained how an individual experiences a memory as a memory rather than as an hallucination of something present. A putative neural account of memory cannot deal with the difference between perceptions of memories because there is no past tense, or indeed future tense, in the material world. Consciousness, with its implicit sense of now, is required to locate events in one panel or the other of the triptych past, present, and future. The conscious subject provides the reference point. That's why, as Einstein said, physicists know that the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. And consistent materialism should not allow for the possibility of memory, even less for the sense of the individual or collective past. It only seems to do so because observers and viewpoints and consciousness are smuggled into the image of the successive states of the brain, making it seem that the later states can be about earlier states. As if the unity of the self or the subject at a given time are not sufficiently resistant to neurological explanation, the unity of the self over time is even further beyond the reach of neuroscience. The objective endurance of the brain, or brain states, does not generate the co-presence of successive states of the self, even less the sense that one has temporal depth. Alas, there's not enough time to go into this present free will, or the nature of knowledge, though here's a couple of references that deal with that in some detail, basically trashing the claim that neuroscience has, as it were, has shown that free will is unreal, and that neuroscience can understand the nature of knowledge, which belongs not to the organism, by the way, of knowledge, but to, as Donald Davidson said, to a community of minds. Well, I've drawn attention to the gap between brain function and consciousness, and I've given reasons why I think the gap is unbridgeable. But we really shouldn't leave things at that. We have to ask where we go from here. I've explained already, I'm an atheist, I'm not a dualist, and I don't believe in God, and I'm not a creationist nutter. So, there's work to be done. We have to ask, where we go from here? The failure of the brain to explain consciousness, which follows from the failure of matter, understood in the most rigorous scientific manner, to be able to house consciousness, raises two immediate questions. The first question is this: why, if the brain is not the basis of consciousness, is it so intimately bound up with our awareness and our behaviour? Chop my head off, and my IQ falls. Even those of us who object to the reduction of persons to brains have to explain why of all the objects in the world, the brain is so relevant to our lives as persons. Nor can we overlook the extraordinary advances that have come from neuroscience in our ability to understand and to treat diseases that impact on voluntary action, consciousness and mood, something that's been central to my entire professional career. If consciousness, mind and volition are not deeply connected with brain activity, what are we to make of the genuine advances that neuroscience has contributed to our management of those things that affect these central underpinnings of ordinary life? And the second question is whether, having done the difficulty, indeed the impossibility of getting from brains to persons, we should abandon the very notion of the brain as a starting point for our thoughts about human consciousness. So this brings us back to the first question. If we say, I wouldn't start from here, what do we do with the facts of neuroscience? Where does the brain fit into a metaphysics, an epistemology, an ontology that denies the brain a place at their centre? If we're thinking of a new ontology that goes beyond the traditional division of the kinds of things there are in the universe into mental and physical items, or beyond an interactive epistemology that begins with sensations, arising out of the impingement of energy on our brains, and ascends to our knowledge of the laws of nature, how should we make sense of the things that neuroscience tells us? How should we deal with the fact that we are evolved organisms as well as persons? I ask these questions because my talk has been largely negative. It merely clears the decks for the real work. The positive, descriptive, explanatory, and conceptual work that has to be done when, to echo John Locke, we remove some of the rubbish that lies in the way to knowledge. Rubbish about our nature, about the place of mind in nature, and possibly about the nature of nature itself. At any rate, we need to start again thinking about our hybrid status as pieces of matter, subject to the laws of physics, brought home to us when we fall down the stairs, as organisms, underlined when we eat and defecate or fall ill, and as people who have a complex sense of themselves, narrate and lead their lives, and who are capable of thinking thoughts like those I've shared with you. Thank you.
Consciousness, intentionality, the life of the mind is something extra to brain activity. Ray said he's not a dualist once or twice, but I can't quite see why not. Maybe he will explain that later. But I see the issue as very, very simple. I think that everything is physical. That if you've got all the physical stuff, you haven't left anything out. I take it Ray denies it. He says, well, all the physical stuff, the brain stuff is necessary for consciousness, but it's not sufficient. Consciousness is something extra. This is a very nice way of putting the issue, which is due to Saul Kripke. He says, imagine God making the universe. He starts off, he creates the heavens and the earth and so on, and the trees, and he creates the animals and the people. But so far he's just put their bodies there, their brains. He's put all the molecules in place. He's put every molecule that's needed for the universe in its right place. Has he finished? Is his work done? Can he go and rest? Kripke says that if you're materialist, physicalist, you'll say, yes, his work is done. He's finished. But if you're a dualist, you will say, no, he's got still to put the feelings in, the conscious stuff. The conscious stuff is extra to the physical stuff. I'm a materialist, as I said. I think that God's work would be done. Not even God could make a universe that was physically just like this, but had no feelings in. Because the feelings are nothing more than the physical processes. My having a pain is nothing more than my C5 is fine. My seeing something is red is nothing more than a certain activity going on before. Let me make it clear that the materialist isn't trying to eliminate consciousness, appearances, intentionality. They say they're there perfectly well. It's just nothing different from certain brain processes. Ray pointed out quite interestingly that the early history of physical science kind of moved the secondary qualities, moved the colours around, and they're not really in objects, they're reactions in sensory systems. Maybe that's the right way to think about colours, maybe not, but that doesn't decide the issue. Even if you think that colours aren't in the objects but are in your response to the objects, you still think you're having a response, and a physicalist will say, sure, the colour experience is still there. Me, who's looking at the table, still has the experience as of seeing something red, and that's one and the same as certain activity going on in V4 or V8. People know it's not quite clear where colour experience is actually located in the visual cortex, but presumably there's somewhere where it is. Okay, so that's the physicist. The physicist doesn't deny that their experiences, doesn't deny this consciousness, doesn't deny their intention. They just say it's one and the same as certain brain processes. I mean, think about analogy with science. I mean, in the 19th century, people used to think there were two things. There was heat, there was caloric, and there was matter in motion. And then, in the middle of the 19th century, they discovered that there was one thing. The two things are one and the same. They didn't at that point say, oh, there's no heat. Heat doesn't exist. They said, no, heat exists, all right. We just discovered its true nature is molecular motion. So the physicalist similarly doesn't say that appearances don't exist, experiences don't exist. They exist, all right. Of course they do. What the physicalist says is we've discovered their true nature. They're one and the same brain processes. Okay, that's the position, and I take it, despite your standing off from dualism, that you don't agree with the physicalist position. Now the question is, why should you believe the physicalist? I agree it's an unnatural position, it's quite natural. It takes range, it's all this brain stuff, and then in addition, there's the feelings. The feelings are something extra to the brain stuff. But I say that's a mistake. And in support of what I agree is a somewhat surprising position, I think there's a very powerful and simple argument, which is that if physicalism wasn't true, then conscious thinking, conscious states, feelings, and so on, would not have any effects. They would be inefficacious. If you really think that conscious processes, conscious life is something extra to brain processes, then you're condemned to epiphenomena. You're going to have to think of your conscious mind as some kind of, there's a physical train going along, puffs of smoke coming up, that's the conscious activity. activity, but it makes no difference to what happens. And I take